Hey there, Python programmers. It's time to start talking about classes. And these are definitely one of my favorite topics in Python to talk about. So, very exciting. Before we start working with class syntax, we should talk a little bit about like why we would want classes. So, classes are kind of like blueprints or factories for making objects. So far, really what we've played around with is a dictionary, having key value pairs, being able to store lots of different data all in one variable. That's great. Classes are going to do kind of that, but take it even more for us. So a class can have its own attributes or values, variables that we store things in, multiple ones at that. Big difference is a class can have its own method. So this is going to allow us to have an object that can also do things. Now, with classes comes something called object-oriented programming. And again, since classes are made to create objects, that hopefully should make sense. Now, why we might spend time stubbing out a class is because, again, we're ultimately going to make many of these objects. If you just need a single data type to store some information, probably just creating a dictionary on the fly is going to be good enough. But if you're going to make lots of things, I'd say, especially with a database in Python, let's say we have a database for a social media website. Well, we're going to have users. We're probably going to have lots of them. So there should be a class about users and all the things a user can do. And then since it's social media, we should have a post class. A user can make a post, and that post class should have a connection to a user, but should also handle all the things that a post is. And then there could be a comment class. So a little bit of example and kind of why we need or want to know about classes. But hey, let's get into start defining our first class. So keyword is class. Now with class, there is a naming convention. All cat classes should be capital case. It first of all tells you that, hey, this is a class, but it also denotes some importance to them. And then once we've gotten a name, we're going to make a cat class for an example here. We need to do a colon because we are opening up an entire block. So this is going to be like one block more than we've really dealt with because now inside of our cat class, we can write lots of different methods, which are really the same things as functions. It's just they're attached to a class. Now, the first method you're almost always going to want is called a constructor method. We define our methods with def, the same thing as functions. Python knows that we are using def inside a class block. So again, it knows it's a method. This is a very special method. And this again is our constructor. So a dunder or double underscore init. Now, if we remember back to our importing, if we create a file named dunder init, that's an initialization file that's read first. So hopefully it makes a little bit of sense that when we make our classes, our dunder init, this method is our constructor, where it's going to set up our class, what we need to have or what a cat needs to have in order to exist. New bit of terminology here is something called self. So any method that's going to be attached to instances of your class will need this self as the first argument. Ultimately, it kind of tells Python that, hey, this method is connected to this cat, and it also acts as a placeholder once we start creating instances or cat objects. We're going to see that a little more. So we're going to have to start with self. Now, are there any attributes that we want a cat to have? I think so. We're going to want to add those in the constructor as well. So after self, I'm going to go ahead and go with color. I want to keep track of the color of my cat's age. And I'm even going to throw a name in here. Now for my name, again, all the other rules that we've already learned in Python totally exist. So we totally can set default parameters, arguments if we want. So at this point, if we don't provide a name for our cat, it's going to default to having the name of Kitty. Kind of cool. So these are the values that we're expecting to take in as arguments when we create a cat. One thing we have to do is set them up to be basically attributes or a variable of the cat class. So let me just put it out and then we'll explain it. We're going to do self dot color equals color. And then we're going to do this for each one of our attributes. Self dot age equals age. This just will allow us to, again, when we create a cat, pass in this bit of information to create our cat. Now, ultimately, we probably want to create, like we don't have to, but if we're taking in information, parameters, arguments here, there's a good chance we're going to want to create a class variable or instance variable for each one of those. And that's what we're doing here. Now we can make it for others. So again, not everything, not every value always will need to be user input or created. Let's say we just want to have something called self.toys. That's going to be a default list of toys for our cat. And we can do something like a ball, maybe a mouse. How about we do toy mouse? And then one other thing is going to be yarn, right? That's what cats love. So again, we're not letting our user pick the toys. We're having default toys. If we're going to interact with this list of toys, we're going to have to write more methods. This is enough for our first method. So at this point, we totally can create instances of our cats. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create a cat called Blue. That is cat invoked. And then to it, we need to provide, again, just like a function, the minimum number of requirements. So we have to have a color and age. And again, since name's a default, we can have it. We can choose to not. That's kind of up to us. I'm going to go with 9. I'm going to go and name of Blue. While we're at it, let's make a second cat. These are both my cats. We're going to have Patch here. He is a tuxedo cat, Blue's brother. So same age, named Cool. So now we have 2 cats. If we want to go ahead and look at some of their attributes, we can do Blue name. And let's also print patch.age. Cool. Let's give this a run. Python 03. Boom. Okay, look at that. We've got exactly what we were hoping for. Oops. Again, we've got our cat's name of Blue printed out and the age of Patch. So far, again, we can only create new cats with some variables or some information. But hey, this is important. If we wanted to create lots and lots of cats and have them be able to interact with us, do things, have different names, ages, colors, different toys, this is pretty much our setup for our cat class. Cool. So again, this is our first video on classes. Our next one, we're going to come back and talk about writing more methods, not just, again, we've written one method here. This constructor or dunder knit is a method. We're going to want a lot more. See you soon, programmers. And again, like and subscribe.